Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris and welcome to the final episode of LEGO Awards 2024. Everything has been building up to this. We've taken a look at my top 10 favorite minifigures of the year, both licensed and non-licensed, and we've also taken a look at sets across all different price categories. $20 and under, $20 to $50, $50 to $100, and over $100 licensed sets over the course of this series. And now it's time for the big conclusion, my celebration of some of the best sets in the year by counting down my top 10 favorite non-licensed LEGO sets that came in at over 100 US dollars. This is a really big category and there were a lot of contenders here. It was very, very difficult narrowing this list down, but I've brought it down to the top 10. And so let's jump in to number 10. At number 10, we have set number 21353, the Botanical Garden, for $330 from the LEGO Ideas lineup. Now, when this was first announced, I was honestly a little bit skeptical. We had just gotten a beautiful botanical garden from LEGO Friends, and I honestly wasn't sure just how LEGO would improve it. And, well, the answer was basically doing the same thing, but just even bigger. This is a gigantic building. There are a ton of details packed into this, and best of all, it retains the phenomenal sand green and white color scheme that we first saw in the LEGO Friends iteration, just at a much bigger scale. This is basically a full-on botanical museum. There are little headphones hanging at the front of the door where you can listen to an audio-guided tour, there are all sorts of minifigures factored in to explore, and there's details factored into every single aspect of the garden. From the outside to the inside, there was basically no surface left undetailed here, and it is just really, really well done. A lot of the overall look and feel of this building is accomplished by the introduction of a few new pieces. Most important of which is a brand new corner glass element, which I'm sure is going to come in real handy for all sorts of different types of windows, windscreens, and really just anything you would need for a building. It's a cool evolution and continuation of the curved glass element that we received for LEGO City Space, and I really like how it's basically used here in Transclear to let a ton of light into the inside of the building, which is absolutely something you would need for a botanical garden. But first, taking a look at the outside of the garden, even though most of it is on the inside, there are a ton of flowers scattering the outside. In fact, LEGO introduced a number of brand new flower elements for this set in particular, and of course they did appear a few times before this set came out across the Wicked and Wednesday sets, but specifically, we got brand new tulip elements, rose petal elements, and beyond that, just a ton of really nice recolored existing elements to really just add a lot of variety to the foliage here. In fact, they actually modeled every single one of the plants here off of an existing real-world plant, which is really, really impressive. Opening up the inside, of course, allows you to see a full-on interior, from a coffee shop inside of the garden itself that really just makes it feel more like a museum, to actual removable plants, so you can get your hands inside there easily and pose your figures up, to all sorts of different types of plants and builds scattered on the inside of the garden, all kind of categorized by different regions and types of plants in the world. For instance, one of the wings is a more arid desert wing. There's just a ton to do and see inside of here. This is an absolutely phenomenal build, and it's a great one to start off this list. But now let's move on to number 9. At number 9, we have an original LEGO set from the LEGO Dreams theme. This is set number 71486, Castle Nocturnia, for $200 US. I really love this set because this is basically like an MC Escher painting come to life. It's one of the most unique LEGO sets to release this year, featuring a castle that can be oriented across 3 different axes, and a 2-in-1 build that allows you to build something a little bit different for different models. And because of that, I purchased 2 copies of the set to be able to showcase both of them at once. It's a really interesting structure in the show and also just as a LEGO set. And ever since I saw this in the TV show back in season 1, I wondered if they would ever be able to pull it off as a LEGO set, and well, they did. This is truly a feat of engineering. There's a surprising number of studs in the side techniques and really interesting inner core builds for the way that this castle is set up that is deceptively simple. From the outside, it kind of just looks like a standard Lego structure, but the way that it's all put together is very, very cleverly done to allow you to orient this at multiple different angles. I really love how each of the sections has kind of its own character to it as well. You have a teal section that's more focused on nature, so you've got the blue tree and you've got all sorts of different types of colored components there, and then you have a more medieval castle like blacksmith area with the red and the gold, and then on one side you have a bright yellow and gold sector for the hourglass themed exterior. There's a lot going on here. And that's something I really appreciate about the set, is that every single bit of it just feels absolutely unique. Of course, it does include a ton of minifigures and side builds as well, but honestly for me, the big draw of this build is the castle itself, and being able to orient it at all sorts of different types of perspectives is super awesome. The 2-in-1 build is really cool as well, alternating different types of builds to give you something a bit different across each of the sections, although it does come unfortunately at the cost of the cohesive color scheme. While the main version of the build is very split between the teal/blue, the red, and the gold, the alternate build is a little bit more mixed. You have the blue tree growing directly through the center of the castle, and I love how it basically is growing on both ends. You have one at the top and kind of facing the other way. You have a little bit of a defense area with the gold and white section with a gigantic kind of crossbow, Gatling gun, railgun style of setup, which is super cool that you can position around, and altogether it just provides an interesting alternative look at the model, which you can actually sort of see in the show. When you look at the castle from different perspectives, it might look different based on what angle you're looking at. Of course though, I think the main model is the best looking version of this. I currently have it hanging from my ceiling right now, but of course I did want to showcase both versions of the models side by side just to see the amount of creativity that you can get out of a build like this. It is remarkably sturdy and there are all sorts of fun castle-inspired details scattered throughout the model. There's just a lot of really great details to be found here. I love how the waterfall is cascading down from one angle, but at a different angle it looks like it's a pool with fish swimming inside of the pool. I love how you can see like trees creeping up the sides of the building where when you rotate it, it almost looks like moss on the ground. All of these dual function features factored into the build are really, really solid, and I really appreciate just the amount of love and creativity that went into making this. The only unfortunate thing is, well, the price, $200 for this particular castle, especially compared to some of the other sets we're going to be looking at on this list, doesn't really provide the best value. So that's really the only downside of this build for me, but everything else is really well done. And now let's move on to number 8. My number 8 pick is 71819 Dragonstone Shrine from LEGO Ninjago, coming in at $120. When this was first revealed to me back last September, I was absolutely blown away by the amount of detail and beauty packed into a Ninjago set like this. It's actually pretty rare that we get a Ninjago set that is purely kind of peaceful location focused. Sure, it does come with Lord Raz as the villain and a little bit of conflict, but by and large, this is supposed to be just kind of a peaceful area that only appeared very briefly in the show. It's a really beautiful creation made by the incredibly talented designer Li Chi-wing, who has been kind of cooking when it comes to Ninjago, with multiple of his own sets taking up spots on this list and others. This is a really nice sculpture of a dragon with water pouring out of the mouth, a beautiful bonsai-style tree growing out of the side of the arm, and I just love how this is really just a slice of nature. It feels like a really unique carved statue that also has this wooden tree-like element to it curving around the sculpture. Lee was even able to use his trademark piece recolor, the General Grievous cockpit windscreen in dark gray, as a brand new color for it to act as a rock with a hidden away book on the side of the rock. Altogether, it's just a truly beautiful piece, and while $120 may seem like a lot for something like this, I actually feel like the price is pretty much almost there. Sure, maybe $100 would have been a little bit nicer, but I just genuinely love the vibe of this set. How unique it is and how natural everything feels. It almost feels like a mock as opposed to an actual set, and I say that in the best way possible. It's unlike any Ninjago set we have really ever gotten or gotten to date, and it's just a really really interesting build that factors in a little bit of play into the actual side of the shrine. You have an interior with some secrets hidden inside, plus a nice fun platform to tilt a rock back and forth to provide some battle, but also just a really nice and serene location to pose your minifigures in general. It's an absolute winner of a set, and they even included a separate base which you could use to display it on for certain influencers to receive it. And of course, I had to rebuild my own after seeing images of it pop up online, and you can check out that video in a separate review on my channel. With that though, let's move on to number 7. My next pick is the LEGO City Modular Space Station, set number 60433, which retails for $110 US, featuring one of the most unique designs for a LEGO space station yet, a ring-like design utilizing sand blue recolors of gigantic Technic gears, while all having components that can be combined together as modular pieces in other spaceships. Altogether, I'm just really happy with the sheer amount of play value found in this set. Each of the different modules corresponds to a different type of display, whether it be living quarters, a scientific lab, a place to eat, or just the front cockpit of a different spaceship altogether. And yes, you can combine all of them, plus modules from all the other sets, into a massive space train, which of course I had to do in my review. And there's even more modules that just came out for the newest LEGO City sets in 2025. Altogether, I just really appreciate just how unique and livable this space station is. Every single component feels like it has an importance to it. There is something to do for each build, and while the build itself is honestly not even that complex, it's just a fairly simple Technic structure for the ring, and then you make a ton of individual components, I feel like it is the sum of its parts coming together that really sets this set apart from a lot of the other space stations that LEGO has given us in the past. It has a sci-fi flair to it with a cool color scheme and slick details, but it also feels somewhat realistic, kind of bridging the gap between regular LEGO City space and classic space. I'm a big fan of how this set turned out, and I definitely feel like it is one of the most fun sets to play with that came out this year, and because of that, it had to have a place on the list. At number 6, we have another space-themed set, as it comes with 2024, but this one is completely different. It's 42181 VTOL Heavy Cargo Spaceship LT-81, a LEGO Technic space set coming in at $110 US, the same price as the last set. This is one of my favorite LEGO Technic sets of all time, and it's pretty obvious to see why. It's a really interesting sci-fi oriented spaceship that feels like it is, again, just one step removed from the realistic sort of space world, and this is just jam-packed full of features. First of all, true to the namesake, it has a vertical takeoff and landing functionality. Twisting gears in the back allow you to angle the engines pretty much any direction you want, and another gear also allows you to retract the landing gear all at once, which just is so satisfying to operate. It even has a grabber arm underneath the ship which can swing downwards and grab cargo, whether it be a cargo container or one of even the other smaller sets of the wave like the rover. Another one of my favorite features is the cockpit itself is auto-stabilizing. As you angle the ship back and forth, it swings side to side, allowing the pilot inside the cockpit to basically be fully stabilized even while the ship is doing some extreme flight angles. There are all sorts of really interesting details factored into the build, from the fact that you can open up the side panels to showcase the engine detailing on the inside with some piping factored into the build, to the glowing blue right behind the jet exhausts for each of the engines, and the fact that even the tiny container that it picks up contains a small little autonomous rover that does even feature steering to allow it to drive around. There's a lot that you can do here, and overall, I'm just a big fan of how they were able to factor in this new orange color scheme into the build to just have all sorts of unique elements for the build. You've got really nice tail fins on the back utilizing the older style of LEGO Technic helicopter blade for the back tail fins, which I just think looks super cool. You have some brick-built piston detailing for the landing gear, great sticker usage as well for the panels, and altogether, it's one of the most finished and complete versions of a Technic craft that I have ever seen. It even is somewhat minifigure scale. If you have an extra minifigure, you can actually open up the cockpit and place them inside the cockpit itself, which is a really nice touch, and I'm really happy they were able to include that additional feature for this set. Altogether, I just love this ship. It is so swooshable, it is fun to play around with, and is easily one of the best LEGO Technic sets we've gotten in a long time, in my opinion. But with that, let's move on to number 5. At number 5, we have yet another LEGO Ninjago set. Yes, this list is very Ninjago heavy because it has been one of the best years for Ninjago yet, and that is 71814 Tournament Temple City, coming in at $250. Tournament Temple City is just a truly phenomenal display and play set, featuring all sorts of different types of minifigures factored into it, plus a ton of interior details and a beautiful exterior as well. It's the perfect evolution of the classic Ninjago temple set, which we first saw in stuff like the Temple of Erjitsu in 2015, but completely upgraded with modern building techniques. I just love the rock work around the temple itself. The nature mixed in with the architecture is really well done, and there's a ton of really cool play features factored in as well, from a battle on top of the water wheel to all sorts of hidden collapsible rock features, and even a little fall dragon that is a really unique sort of color design for a dragon integrated into the build. There's a lot to love here. Most of the interior is also fully detailed. The caves beneath have a statue of Lily as well as a shrine showcasing the elemental earth mech, and as you go up higher, there's a special place dedicated to the tournament cup, plus a lot of training areas and living spaces for each of the characters factored into the build. There's just a lot of really nice things to see on this build, and while it isn't quite as closed up or fully detailed as, say, a Ninjago City Modular, it has a really nice charm of its own. The color scheme of tan, white, dark blue, and red highlights is a really unique one, and one that honestly I wouldn't have expected to work out just quite as well as it does, but it really does work phenomenally, and I just love all the different details, like a little dripping water along the side of the actual building that showcases the spinning wheel. You have different bits and pieces of moss all around the rock. It's not just a solid color. You have really nice hidden features, a gateway to enter into the temple itself, and just a lot of really great details that you can see when putting it together. $250 for a set as detailed as this with as many minifigures as it has is actually a pretty good price for what you get. But this is not the best Ninjago set of the year for me. So let's go on and keep on moving onwards upwards to the rest of the list. And the next set we have here is another castle themed set. This was part of the Bricklink designer program and is LEGO set number 910029, the Mountain Fortress. Now I know that there is maybe some debate as to whether or not this counts as an official LEGO set, but given that you could actually purchase this directly from LEGO.com during the pre-order period, I'd say it totally counts. This is part of a program where adult fans of LEGO can design their own LEGO sets out of a parts palette, and if they get enough support, they can be turned into an official set. Sort of similar to LEGO Ideas, but without the actual LEGO designers coming in and redesigning it and having it be sold in stores. It's a much more limited run, but it's a really interesting style of build, and it actually brings out a lot of creativity because they really just are able to get away with a lot more unique building techniques that you normally wouldn't see in a LEGO set. Now this set retailed for $380 US, 340 euros or 300 British pounds, and came with 3,995 pieces, which is actually pretty good value for what you get. It's a large-scale reimagining of a classic Black Falcon's fortress, this time depicting it in the snow, and I just love the amount of detail that was able to be factored into the set. There's an icy frozen river coursing around the build, and the entire build can open upwards into a much larger layout or a more enclosed tower, depending on how you want to display it, very similarly to the Lionites Castle from the 90th anniversary series. I really appreciate just how different of an option this gives you compared to the previous LEGO set versions, which typically the Lionites Castle was a very sort of sunny set featuring green grass and a very welcoming environment. This, on the other hand, since the Black Falcons are maybe more of a slightly villainous faction, feels a lot more cold and foreboding, and it very much is a different vibe compared to that style of set. I love the building techniques to actually have the snow cascading around the castle, to the way the rocks are shaped at different angles surrounding the castle itself, and just how much detail they managed to pack into this build, from the exterior and the interior. Everything makes sense on the way that minifigures can get to different levels. There are staircases, ramps, all different places for minifigures to go, even a stable to store the horses when they're not in use, and that's something I really appreciate. A lot of thought was put into making this set fully playable for people to be able to put their minifigures in different scenarios. Even the main tower is fully enclosed, but has a lot of different ways you can open it up to allow for minifigures to be posed in different scenes. There's a simple throne, there's an armory, there's a weapons rack, there's even a place where a younger Black Falcon kid can grow up and even play with a large-scale model of the Lion Knight's castle. There's just a lot of really great details factored into the build here, and I really appreciate the amount of detail you get on both the exterior and the interior. I really do love just the cold winter aesthetic of the set. It brings something unique that we haven't really seen in any other LEGO castle set really before this one, and there's a lot of really interesting building techniques, from studs on the side windows to the plus shape they were able to build into the way the sides of the actual windows look, and overall, this is just a phenomenally detailed set at a pretty good price as well. The only downside is that since this was only available for a very short pre-order period, it's a pretty hard set to come by nowadays, and it was only available for just such short of a time. Still, it's a beautiful castle and absolutely deserved to be high on this list. But now let's move on to number 3. Coming in at number 3, we have set number 80054, the LEGO Monkey Kid Megapolis City, retailing for $190. This is the latest expansion in the modular LEGO Monkey Kid series, compatible with the City of Lanterns, the team hideout, and pretty much any of the other buildings they've created for the theme. Made to celebrate the 5th anniversary of LEGO Monkey Kid, which hits at the end of 2024, this is a true celebration of everything that's come in the past, featuring a dedicated storefront for each of the previous faction villains, as well as a whole host of minifigures to complete the entire scene. One of my favorite details about the city is just how playable it is in terms of interior space. Every single building is completely different, with its own color scheme, sort of theming around it, and they all serve different purposes, from a jewelry store to a chiropractor's office and even an amazing space-themed elevator. There's a lot to see and do here, and I really appreciate just how much detail went into creating every little scene in the city. Even big and small, each and every one of the main villains had some sort of a call out here. Red Sun has a small barbecue area, the Spider Queen has a seamstress place, even the Lady Bone Demon has an office as well, and add to the fact that you have all sorts of different types of stores and things to do, from a Ferris wheel to a food store to all sorts of even hidden Easter eggs inside the floorboards of the set. There is a lot to be done. But the real joy out of this set comes with the fact that it is once again modular with the previous sets, and there is actually an official configuration for how to combine this with the previous City of Lanterns and the other sets to make a much bigger scene, even allowing the monorail to loop through the entire scene itself, which is really cool. I really appreciate just how much love and attention went into crafting all the individual scenes here and making them all compatible with the prior sets. Having them all combined just looks super good on display, and I'm really curious to see if LEGO will continue to give us large-scale LEGO Monkey Kid city sets like this. But altogether, that's about it for this entry, so let's move on to number 2. In second to last place, we have set number 42639, Andreas Modern Mansion from the LEGO Friends theme, retailing for $200. This is an absolutely phenomenal building, and I just love the color scheme and how it brings something completely unique to the LEGO portfolio, unlike really any other building we've seen before. Depicting a modern-style mansion, there are a ton of different things that you can do with this actual build. Not only does it look very good on display with the rockwork, the flowers creeping up the side of the wall, and even some trees oriented on the side of the building, but there's a ton of functions packed in as well. Turning a lever on the side of the building allows the garage to open up with a car sliding outwards, and on the inside it is jam-packed full of interior detail. I love the gradient of the color around the front of the mansion, showcasing the pink, the red, the orange, transitioning over to yellow, and they recolored a ton of the original garage door elements in transparent colors to accompany this, which is a really interesting and unique design. Altogether, from the pool on the outside to full-on access on the interior thanks to an actual functioning elevator, this is one of the most complete playsets that LEGO has really ever put out. There's a music recording studio in the basement, a living room with a piano on the ground floor, a place to serve some appetizers and drinks up on the outside bar area, and you even have the integration of a full-on toilet and kids room on the second floor here, an area for a ton of family pictures, a rotating sofa couch, and a rooftop patio. There is just a ton to see and do inside of this building, and aesthetically speaking, it's just really well done. I like how unique the architecture is. It is, after all, a modern architecture style of design, so you have a mix between different angles and cylinders, and just a very unique style and silhouette of a building, very unlike what you would normally see for a standard LEGO building, and I just really love just the amount of creativity that went into depicting this model. Even the car included is super cool, with a bright blue color scheme and coral wheels, which looks really unique. It almost feels like a hybrid between a close to being a Speed Champions vehicle and a standard set type of car, and altogether, it's just very unique in its construction, and one of the standout LEGO Friends sets of the year, a part of an already amazing LEGO lineup. Altogether though, that's pretty much all I have to say about this one, so let's move on to my number one pick of the best non-licensed LEGO set that came out this year over $100. At number 1, we have the largest LEGO dragon ever made so far, and that is 71822 the Source Dragon of Motion, retailing for $150 US. Also designed by LEGO designer Lee Chi-wing, this is the best Ninjago dragon we have ever gotten hands down, and dare I say maybe one of the best LEGO dragons in general. First of all, it is an absolutely massive set, but somehow the price is really justified here. All of the budget for the set goes into making this absolutely gigantic dragon jam-packed full of detail, articulation, and posability, and this is just a really cool looking build. From the gold underbelly to the dark red and bright red transitioning to transparent orange up at the top, it's just really well done in every single detail factored into the build. And first of all, just aesthetically speaking, I love how this set looks on display. For a set this large, I would have expected it to not really be that posable, but somehow they managed to factor in a ton of posability into the build here, even more than you would normally see on a standard LEGO Ninjago dragon. You can move the legs, you can move all the different joints of the tail, rotating side to side and in a circular motion, same with the neck and the head, opening and closing the jaw, but my favorite part of this has to easily be the way the wings work. You see, the wings are mounted on the traditional joints that they use for mech arms and legs, which allows a full range of motion, but that's not all. You can even fold the wings thanks to a ratcheting joint recolored in dark red specifically for this set, which allows for even more articulation. You can have the wings folded back or stretched all the way out. It really just is whatever you want to make it. There's even articulation in the waist of the creature, allowing you to pivot it side to side, which is really nothing like we've ever seen in a lot of other Ninjago dragons before. Even posability aside, this is just a lot of fun to play with. You can get this in all sorts of different movements and poses, but it also just looks good completely in the default form, and a lot of that is thanks to the incredible shaping and sculpting of the build. It's pretty hard to make LEGO bricks come across as an organic sculpture, but it's really done well here. You can really see the way the muscles move on the legs and the arms and even the side of the body, and I'm just really impressed by the amount of detail they managed to pack in to something that is meant to be an organic creature. You've gotten gold armor plating on the side of the arms there and the legs, it's got knee pads, it's got a really nice gradient of the color scheme going from the bottom to the top, and even the head is done really nicely, utilizing the newer climber hook element as the large horns of the creature. Now, one of the most interesting things about the model is it also includes a villainous evil throne for Lord Raz. While this is not something we saw in the show, and the set designers did actually say this is literally something they just made up for conflict in a box and to make it a more dynamic set for play, I actually think it's a really cool idea to have Lord Raz or a villain be taking over a Source Dragon. Maybe it's a little bit too early to see that in the show, but I personally would love to see something like that in the later seasons of Dragons Rising. With the throne removed, the dragon also looks really great. I like how posable it is, especially when you remove the throne with the wings being able to flap up and down and back and forth, and it really just looks very complete and finalized even without the saddle, which was basically put there to allow you to place minifigures on the back of it. Still, everything about the model's saddle or otherwise is phenomenally done, it's very posable, it looks great on display, and is the best LEGO dragon ever made so far, and it certainly raises a lot of expectations for what sorts of dragons we might be seeing in the future of Ninjago. That's all for this list, and I hope you enjoyed my countdown of my favorite non-licensed over $100 sets of the year, and with that, we have summed up LEGO Awards for 2024. Stay tuned because, of course, this time next year, we'll be counting down the best of 2025, and let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with the inclusions on this list. Was I missing anything? And definitely stay tuned and check out the other videos in the LEGO Awards series as well to check out some of my other favorite sets, where actually, I think my favorite set of the year was actually the $100 Cole's Titan Dragon mech set, which we featured on one of the prior videos. That's all for now, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.